This podcast does not provide medical advice. The information included but not limited to any videos, text, graphics, image materials, or any programs or consultations contained within this podcast are for information purposes only. The podcast does not constitute providing medical advice or professional services. It does not constitute a patient-physician relationship. If you have medical concerns, please seek out your private physician, or if you feel you have a medical emergency, please contact 911. Welcome to Kars Koaching, the podcast where we combine our love for cars, medicine, and self-development to get you to the life that you deserve. Hey guys, Dr. K here for another episode of Kars Koaching, our podcast where we bring our love of cars, our love of medicine, and self-development all together. And today I have a special guest with me, a good friend of mine who I've known. We were just trying to figure that out prior to starting the podcast. For about 4 years now, Tyler Kelly, and he is the creator of InstaShred. And Tyler, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me, Mike.
Oh, man,
Appreciate
my pleasure.
Glad to be here. So I started my fitness journey. That is my number one passion about 15 years ago. I really didn't have any drive towards anything in life. And I picked up my first bodybuilding magazine late high school and said, you know what, this is the first thing in life I want to apply myself to. So had a couple coaches, stepped on the bodybuilding stage, and I was hooked. I finally found something that I could have some passion towards.
You actually did it competitively, correct?
Yeah, for quite a few years.
Yeah. How many years?
About 5.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 years competing, then took 3 years off. Tried to not be a skinny little bitch. And then give a couple more competitions a try.
Yeah.
So.
No, and we met actually through a mutual friend of ours at the hospital that I worked at, and we kind of hit it off and have been doing things, a lot of self-development together and things of that nature.
Yeah, it's evolved into a lot, right? Went from cars to self-development, all the rest.
Yeah, and that's actually what brought us together. So, you know, it's kind of interesting. We talk about Kars Koaching where the cars actually fit in, and that's actually how we met. Because I know you were interested in cars, and Cameron, the mutual friend of ours, said, hey, you need to come over and take a look at Dr. K's cars. And we met, we started talking, and then we started doing some development stuff together.
Yeah.
But what really intrigues me is your entrepreneurial spirit and the fact that you kind of ventured off on your own. You found something that you actually love, which I think is extremely important in anything that you do. And you, through your self-discipline, did coaching, I believe, one-on-one originally, and then went ahead and turned that into InstaShred, which is now an online product. So you got to kind of share how that all came about.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for the kind words. What started everything was I began as a personal trainer, how a lot of people get into the fitness industry. Did that for 8 years, absolutely loved it, but then I just wanted to turn over a new stone. And I actually got hit with an ad online that said, hey, come to New York to my in-person event and I'll show you how to go from an in-person trainer to an online trainer. And I just felt something within me. I knew the internet wasn't going anywhere, so I went to this event. And I completely quit my job, went for this online avenue, because I think what really got me was I was working with anywhere between 20 to 40 clients on average a month. And after doing that year after year, I was like, man, I'm learning so much more. I feel like I have so much more to give. How can I expand on this? How can I reach more people? And I knew online was the way to go. Yeah. And so that began about 7 years ago.
Wow.
And so those first few years, once again, it was kind of the same thing with the transition to InstaShred, as you just mentioned. The first 3 years online, I was training one-on-one, anywhere between maybe 40 to 60 people. But then I was like, okay, how can I branch out even more, help even more people? And that's where InstaShred was born.
Yeah. So was InstaShred the original platform? Was that the original name and everything that you started right out of the gate?
No, InstaShred was born about 5 years ago. Before that, it was Logical Lifting. So Logical Lifting was my one-on-one fitness coaching company that I started my first 2-3 years of being online.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. So what have you, from the entrepreneurial perspective, obviously much different. Now being online, you're able to go ahead and touch so many more people. Mm-hmm. So that obviously has that advantage. Do you miss the one-on-one coaching that you've been doing?
Yeah, but when I think about missing the in-person elements, I mean, I get the in-person elements by working out with friends. getting like-minded conversations in and just having casual conversations through my workouts. I get my fix that way, but I never really miss it because I get so much juice out of the online avenue and realizing how many more people I help that I realize training people in person is honestly just a waste of my time now.
Yeah, no, I could see that, and I've used InstaShred in the original form, I think.
Yeah, years ago.
Because
in the very beginning,
you keep going through and always improving it and keep adding to it. And I always said, coaching from a physical perspective, like what you do, and self-development, they're so intertwined. Because your ability to be able to actually go ahead and do the workouts and be diligent with the diets, etc., it's all mindset. A lot of it is willpower, the ability to be able to go ahead and actually accomplish what you set out to do. And I find that a lot of the coaches, such as yourself, have a lot of that self-development in them that they pass on to their clients to be able to do things.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think you probably know more of the statistic than I do, but how many days does it take to create a habit?
Yeah.
You know?
And that's debatable. Some people say 60, some say 30, and then others say it's not
That's
so
why
much.
I turn to you.
Yeah, it's not so much the actual time as how repetitive something is. And the more repetitive it is, the more likely you are to actually make it a habit. So,
yeah.
I think that's extremely important. And nothing better than what you actually do in order to help people. Unfortunately, as COVID hit, the increase in obesity, we're struggling with obesity in this country and all across the entire world. I think it's something like 2 out of 5 people are obese, which means that their BMI is greater than 30, and even more people are overweight, so 25 to 30 on the BMI. And then when COVID hit, that actually increased by 3%. And we're filming this right after Oprah had the big event on in ABC about all the different injectables and the pharmacologicals that allow, the GLP-1s and things of that nature. So your Ozempic and Wegovy and all of that. So just curious. When you take on people, some of them obviously have different reasons for doing the physical activity and the training. Some want it for aesthetics, right? Others want it for health. What's your approach towards that weight loss component for those people that struggle with that?
Well, it's definitely not the things you just mentioned. No facades up in here. Right. No, I think you said the word willpower. I think it always starts with a little bit of willpower, but I always realize when you get someone on that journey and they've got to apply themselves a little bit, they never really regret it. Weeks, months in. In the beginning, they always kind of want that simple answer, what's the pill that I can take? But in the end, they're not going to be satisfied with that, in my opinion. When you apply yourself towards something, the reward is so much more appreciated. Would you agree?
No, I do agree, and I think it's something that we've talked about because we did one-on-ones, we did group sessions and everything. We talked about this. It's action and motivation, and a lot of people wait to be motivated in order to do something, and it's actually the action comes first, motivation comes second. So I think the ability for you to get somebody to start a process and then actually see, hey, there's a change. I think that motivates them and gets them on that flywheel that allows them to continue to do that.
Yeah, and so to answer your question, my philosophy is utilizing what is already within our body. And so the metabolism is something people highly overlook. It's mostly disregarded. And a lot of people think, your metabolism slows down with age, and it's depicted by this, and it's predispositions. And your metabolism can be manipulated no matter what age you are, no matter what gender you are. And it really doesn't decrease as much as people think over time. People think that when they get older, they love that excuse, my metabolism is slowing down, I got to eat less food. And what they're really doing is slowing down their metabolism by eating less food. So what we do is use the strategy of setting them up for success. So you asked, what's the typical weight loss journey? We get people's bodies used to more food because 80% of people on average are eating fewer calories than they should be. And so let's say you're 60 pounds overweight, you're already eating under what you should. Well, what do you do to lose weight? You're going to eat less?
Right.
Or maybe go work out 6-7 days a week. It's just not sustainable. So we build their food intake up at a slow enough rate to where they don't gain any appreciable weight, and now they're teed up for a successful fat loss journey. And they're eating enough food to where they can go out and eat with their friends have a Starbucks or something with more calories than usual and not rebound, go on vacation and gain that unnecessary weight that people dread.
Yeah.
And so really gaining control of the metabolism is the philosophy of InstaShred, because it really helps people to eat a normal amount of food, and then when they get to their goal, not rebound because they're not eating like a bird.
No,
But I think one of the statistics too, it was amazing. I think it's actually not until 90 years old does the metabolism decrease by, I believe it was 22%.
Yeah.
90 years old. A lot of people think at 40, 50, 60, their metabolism is just tanking, and it's just not true.
No, it is actually interesting, because I think when you look at weight loss and exercise to be able to change your physique, I think there are some fundamentals. And the fundamentals are clean eating, more protein, proper fats, things of that nature, proper exercise. But I do think that there is some of the population, that works for the majority of the population.
Sure.
I do think there are some people that do struggle. Now they're actually looking at obesity as a disease, right? What worries me about all of the pharmaceutical interventions is not that they're not needed. I think for a certain population, they are more than appropriate. What always worries me is the old saying, right? That people forget. It took me 10 years to become an overnight success. And I think in the society that we're in now, it's that microwave society. So what they're saying is, hey, listen, I've got a reunion coming up. I got to lose 5 pounds.
Yep.
Hand me the Ozempic, and off I go, and I fit in a dress. So I'm not opposed. First of all, I'm not a nutritionalist, right? And we're not talking about providing medical information or anything of that nature. It's just my opinion.
Sure.
I think from that perspective, I think people need to understand that the fundamentals that you provide, the proper nutrition, the proper exercise, the proper hydration with water, that's the fundamentals. There's some people that need that extra added boost. They may have something wrong metabolically, hormonally, things of that nature.
Absolutely.
They're already tipping towards pre-diabetes, or they have type 2 diabetes and need to lose that extra weight. And then I think the pharmacological interventions as well as the surgical interventions may make sense. But what I always worry about is anytime something comes out that's absolutely fabulous, right? People want to take that as a shortcut. And I think what people need to understand is the fundamentals is still how you gain your health.
Yeah, look, Mike, it's simple but not easy.
Yeah, no.
Right?
Exactly.
And you mentioned even there's only 3 things that make up a calorie: carbs, protein, and fats.
Right.
It's not that complex.
Right.
And like you said, most people are consuming mostly carbs and fats. So if they just ramp up their protein, they're naturally going to be eating less of the bullshit,
Right.
and eating more of what's going to fuel the body in more beneficial ways, especially if you're active. So there's a ton of variables, but like the big picture, why we focus so much on the metabolism, because that's a long-term measure of success. The crash diets and stuff, of course, they're going to lose weight. A crash diet really is as simple as making a drastic change. If you take away one of those 3 components that make up a calorie, you're going to fucking lose weight.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
No.
That's the whole reason why keto and all the rest work, because if you eliminate carbohydrates completely, well, look how small your window of food opportunity is. There's way less things you can eat. And so sometimes I don't think people get that through their heads. And I'd say 95% of people that go on keto aren't doing it for the enjoyment. They're doing it because they want to lose weight. And so how long is that going to last?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, industrial revolution wise, right? That's when everything came through, where things started being very processed. It's very easy to pop something into the microwave. If you actually look at the history of foods, and the size of the portions have excessively increased and things of that nature, I think it's extremely important to be able to understand where all of that is coming from. It's interesting when you look at chronic disease as it relates to our population and our generation. It really started coming around when we started doing all the processing of foods. So I think there was somebody, I forgot who said this, and it's kind of true. If you eat clean, you eat protein, don't eat things that are highly processed. And someone said if it has a long shelf life, it's going to decrease your life. And I think that makes sense, And I think you stay away from white sugar. I mean, you stay away from sugar. You stay away from white flour and things of that nature. And I think you're going to go ahead and be healthier, right? I think that's the
Yeah.
catch. The catch is how do you be healthy?
I like that you mentioned that because there's a big difference, and I didn't realize this until a few years ago, honestly. There's a difference between health and being fit. Mm-hmm. And the years of competing as a bodybuilder, the years of competing as a powerlifter, honestly, I just wanted to be fit. Right. I was all about those three things that made up a calorie. And this is more advanced than most people would need to go, but I was all about just the calorie number, and I didn't really care how many ingredients I was consuming.
Right.
And so the past few years, I've realized, okay, brain fog kicks in, and you start to realize, wow, I'm eating a lot of bullshit, even though my calories are in check. And then you start to take health into perspective. And so I think a fun game for anyone really to try is count how many ingredients you eat in a day. You might be surprised.
Oh, yeah? No.
Yeah.
You eat a box of cookies, there's probably 1,400 ingredients.
Right? Yeah.
In there,
and I've gotten
and
to the point where it's become fun to try and stick around 50 total ingredients a day.
Yeah.
That's kind of my mental goal in my head. Sometimes I'll blow it out of the water. Sometimes I'm right in check.
No, and that's the catch, because what are you doing? Then you're eating clean. You're eating things that are coming from nature, which is important, and it's not genetically modified. It doesn't have all of the preservatives. It doesn't cause all of the food allergies that you get, all the gluten intolerance, all of those things, and I think that's extremely important. And I think we miss that a lot because, and the interesting thing is I was listening to something, and the amount of food organizations that lobby Congress to be able, like Coca-Cola that sponsors different things, and all of the different food giants that sponsor things. It's kind of hard in our society because sometimes when you look at it, we're faked out a little bit because we're told that things are healthy for us, and we kind of skew what's healthy and what's not. And I think if you just logically think about it and eat things that are natural and eat things that come from the ground, I think you'll be okay, right? I don't think you have to go through and eat all of the processed foods or all of the preservatives and the things that come through there. I think that's extremely important.
Absolutely. I mean, look how many ailments come from all of the stuff we're pumping in
food
nowadays. All the man-made stuff going into food. And I think that's part of what helped me turn is I'm like, I want to stay crystal clear. Every people forget this component. They overlook it because they're on autopilot doing all their things throughout daily life, but they don't stop to think like, man, is all this crap I'm doing on a daily basis worth it if I'm operating at a 5 out of 10?
Yeah, no.
People, and some people I don't even think realize what it feels like to feel like a 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 on a daily basis.
I agree 100%. I think what happens is, and I've told this story numerous times, and it's one of my partners actually got sick and had a heart attack, and they did a procedure, and I remember visiting him the next day and asking him. He did fine, and I asked him, how are you doing? And he goes, you know what? I didn't realize how good I feel because I was used to feeling shitty. And I think that's what actually happened. So you kind of touched on that, right? We really don't know how good we're supposed to feel because we feel bad and we're used to it. So one of the things that I tell all of my clients is, make yourself that experiment, that N of 1, right? So what might work for you in terms of nutrition, in terms of exercise, may not work for me, right? The fundamentals are still there. Right. We still need to eat properly. We still need to exercise. But my definition of exercise and what's going to make me feel good might be completely different than what's going to make you feel good, and what you eat is going to make you. Because I know that if I go to eat late at night and I eat pasta or something, the next morning I feel like garbage, right? But I think we're so used to feeling bad, we think it's normal. I think that's the catch,
Well said.
Between the exercise and the diet, in your InstaShred program, there's always that saying, right? Abs aren't made in the gym, they're made in the kitchen, right? So how much do you actually put weight on the exercise component or the diet component as you approach a client on InstaShred?
Yeah, diet's always going to make more of a difference. It takes way less discipline and energy to, say, eat 200 fewer calories than burn off an extra 200 calories. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No.
So food is always going to be superior to exercise. But with InstaShred, we always have a progressive element, whether it's the exercise or the nutrition side. You've got to be moving in a direction with the body. When people get stagnant for too long, the body loves to adapt to any situation.
Right.
And so when you start under-eating calories, as we were talking about earlier, the body gets used to under-eating. And so then when you want to lose weight, you kind of screwed yourself. You got to hit the reset button. You got to start over. And so with InstaShred, both on the workout side, we implement progressive overload. So you're always moving in a direction. You're increasing the weight, the sets, or the reps in some way, even if it's in the smallest amount. If it's 2.5 pounds on an exercise each week, at least you're doing a total of more volume, more tonnage in that workout. Or if it's running, you're running 0.2 miles more than you did yesterday. Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
And from the eating perspective as well, it's the same concept. You've got to be moving in a direction, otherwise your body's going to catch up. And unless you're completely happy with where you're at and you're just trying to maintain, you've got to be moving in a direction. So if you're in a fat loss phase and you start to get to the point where maybe you're feeling a little lethargic or you're hitting a plateau, okay, maybe that's time to take a diet break, one would call it, and build your calories back up a little bit, just slowly. Add some more nutrition, get the vitamins and minerals back in the system, and increase the total amount of calories without losing any of the progress you made. And then when you're ready to go at it again, you can do that same process. But some people go in one direction for so long and you cap out, And same with the working out from a number of days perspective. A lot of people, when they're not exercising, I'll encourage them and say, hey, in a way, it's kind of a good thing that you're starting from ground zero, because we're going to make a lot of progress working out 1 to 2 days a week. Right. Instead of going, a lot of people, like you said, they've got the wedding or the event or the vacation they want to go on, and what do? They go from 0 to 5 days a week. Right. It's like, you'll probably lose some weight your first couple weeks, but when your body adapts to 5 weeks, what are you going to do then?
Right. Right.
You miss that whole window of working out 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week that could have lasted 3 months of progress, and you went straight to 5.
Yeah, plus it's psychologically it's unsustainable, I think. There's some people that are able to do it. We talked about willpower, but for the most part, you go out gangbusters out of the gate and do that.
Gangbusters.
It may last a couple of weeks, and then you're going to say, okay, I'm done.
Absolutely.
If you could even do it on your third day when you go all out,
and even
you
if
won't
you
be able to move.
Even if you have the willpower, do you really want to spend all that extra time doing that? Some people are like, well, I don't mind it, but it's like, would you really rather be doing that than spending time with your wife or girlfriend or at home with the family? You know what I mean?
Right. No.
So why work smarter, not harder?
Right.
Why spend more time doing it than you need to?
So in the InstaShred program, is it I remember, might be a little bit before your time and before some other people's time, but P90X, that's 90 days, right?
Oh yeah.
So is InstaShred a lifelong project, or does it have intermittent goals that you're able to set? How did you set that up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So InstaShred itself is meant to obtain a goal, build muscle, lose fat, athleticism, etc. But the principles of InstaShred will help you maintain what you've achieved.
Okay. So you just continue it. So I guess my question is this: it's not a quick fix of 90 days. It may be because you could attain a short-term goal,
right.
But the ultimate purpose is to have it create a lifestyle where it's something that you could continue to do forever.
Exactly. Like the one-on-one element of InstaShred is a 5-month process. And one thing I like to share with people is, hey, after these 5 months, you should not need another fitness coach. Right. Because we're teaching you everything you need to know and need to have to continue keeping what you've achieved. Right. Shouldn't be a sign-on process. I've seen those trainers in the past where they constantly are trying to sign on clients, and what I began asking myself is, shouldn't a good trainer or coach be able to give you the tools that you need to do it on your own? If you want to keep the accountability aspect of a coach, great. Right. But you should be able to do it on your own if you wanted to.
Yeah. No, I think you hit on something that's important, because even when we coach, it's for a certain period of time. Right. But then we extend it out a little bit for those monthly checks. And I think that's important. You should be able to attain the skill set for whatever you're doing. I think it's always nice to have those little check-ins just to adjust where you're at. I think that's extremely important.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the accountability is a luxury. It's less work.
Right. Right.
I love having coaching in some areas of my life. Even though I know I can do it on my own, I still like to have someone do the dirty work for me.
Right. No, and I think that's important. I think, we talked a lot when we were in a group setting, et cetera, rationalize, which comes from Covey and John Asheroff, where you spell rationalize, Lies, at the end. And I think it's very easy for us, right, if we're the only one we have to answer to, we love making excuses so we don't have to do something.
Dang.
So I think that's really where coaching has that huge benefit, right? Because now I know that if I'm going somewhere, well, Tyler's going to be there, my coach is going to be there, so now I have to do that. So you feel accountable to someone else, you're more apt to do it. Whereas when it's to yourself, you could rationalize all kinds of things. Oh, I had a rough day, and I took the stairs instead of the elevator up that one floor, so I don't need to exercise today, whatever it is.
I see what you're saying.
You end up talking yourself out of it. But once you have somebody that you're accountable to, I think that allows you to do it better. Because really, right, we're tribal, right? So we like to kind of do things in groups and with other people.
Yeah.
So I think...
Say so.
And we always want to fit in. So if you're not doing what everybody else is doing, that's that kind of extra push to be able to get you to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that in today's day and age. A lot of cultures being created.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Good and bad.
Without a doubt. Willpower. We touched on it earlier in the conversation, and willpower is thought. There's different schools of thought. Some people feel that willpower is really finite, right? Where you have a limited amount of willpower throughout the day, and whatever you're going to actually, if you're going to use a lot of willpower during the day, towards the end of the day, you won't have that willpower to be able to go ahead and make the proper decisions. They talk a lot about sleep decreasing willpower if you decrease your sleep. Nutrition, things of that nature, decreases willpower. How do you get your clients motivated to get that willpower for them to continue those exercise?
If you don't mind me asking first, what would you say is your definition of willpower, personally?
Self-discipline, the ability to do something when you feel that you don't want to. I think that's how I look at willpower. So willpower could be split into three things. I will, I won't, and I want. That actually comes from Kelly McGonigal from Stanford. That's how she describes it. So it's really the ability to police yourself, if you will. Police is kind of a strong word, my word, right? To do the things that you're supposed to do or not do the things that you're supposed to do, right? And that's kind of what drives you.
Okay. Yeah, I think willpower, when I think of willpower, I think of like getting in one of the latest fads in a tub of ice, a cold tub. You need a certain depth of willpower for that, because no one is truly going to enjoy that.
Right.
So you just got to get in and freaking do it.
Yeah.
But with our clients, there's always going to be willpower in the beginning, because it's definitely like, obviously they came to you for coaching because there's something within themselves that they can't do.
Right.
But I really try to dig deeper into the why, because a lot of people want to achieve a superficial result for a reason that isn't the true reason. And so we really try to unveil, what is the true reason, the true why. And we've talked about your why in many areas of life as to why you want this goal, why you want to lose 50 pounds, why you want your husband to look at you differently when you step out of the shower, why you want to look good on vacation, and a lot of the times they just think I just want to be healthier. And it's such a vague answer. It's not enough for them to carry out anything remotely related to fitness and incorporate fitness into their life. It's not enough, So I think I'm a little skewed as far as what I look at as willpower, because it's such a temporary thing when it comes to building lifelong fitness habits.
Right.
It's digging deeper and truly figuring out the why to not only accomplish the goal, but then to maintain it from there on out and make it a part of your life.
I think you hit on a lot of important things. When we talk about the importance of setting a goal, one of the most important things is clarity. And then you touched on the second thing, right? We always ask people, what do you want? So that's clarity. Crystal clear, though. Not lose weight, because you can lose a pound, you win, right?
Yeah.
But if you say, I want X amount of weight, I want X amount of body fat by X amount of time, now you've got a structure to where you're actually going down the line. And it prevents you from what we talked about earlier, which is the rational lying, right? You say, well, I did kind of lose weight and things of that nature. The second thing is exactly what you're talking about, is the why. So why do you want it, right? And if your why is strong enough, you're going to do it. But if your why doesn't really matter, you're not going to have that drive to be able to carry you through that entire goal.
Damn. So well
You
said.
know, and then the last thing is are you committed or are you interested? Because sometimes people say, yeah, all right, my wife's nagging me. I'm interested. Go ahead, tell me. Let's try this. And it's hard, right? Because we fall back, we rationalize, we say, okay, we're not going to do it, and then the accountability and everything falls through. So I think that was very well said. I think you really need to understand what your why is, because if you don't have that proper why, I don't care what you do, you're going to eventually falter and not do what you need to do. So if the why is too vague, you're going to be able to fit it in to tell yourself a story. Because we always tell ourselves a story, right? So if I say, oh, I was working out and I lost weight. Did you? Oh, yeah. Maybe 1 pound. Well, your goal wasn't clear enough to get you to where you need to be. So I think that's important.
Man, preach it. Yeah. It's interesting too, and maybe you've noticed this in your field, but I can feel if someone's there. Like when someone's sharing with you what they want, you can tell if their why is strong enough, if they're convicted. And sometimes if they're not, you let them go.
Yeah,
until it's strong enough.
Yeah, and exactly. And sometimes they'll realize what their why is through the process. Sometimes they don't, right? Yeah. I mean, let's look at, you look at New Year's, right? I mean, how the big gyms, the big box gyms work, right? New Year's comes, New Year's resolution. Everyone's in the gym. Come January, come February. By March, you shoot a cannon through that for most part, right? Those people that had those resolutions, because their why wasn't strong enough and they weren't set up for the proper way to actually be able to do something. And the other thing, I think that you have to mentally, no matter what your goal is to be able to understand what we talked about earlier, that it might take me 10 years to become an overnight success. In other words, it might take me a long time to get to where I'm going.
Yeah.
And the ability for you to self-reflect and be self-aware and say, hey, these are the small steps. There's a saying, right? Little by little becomes a lot. But, if you work out and all of a sudden the next day you wake up and, what the hell, no six-pack. What happened, right? It's not a day. It takes a while. And if you can get that action to get you to be motivated and understand slowly but slowly, you're going to go ahead and make a big difference.
Wow.
And it's important,
That's well said. I mean, that's where I take a little bit of false ownership in the fact that sometimes it's hard to be a really good coach, because fitness for me and self-development for you and something for everybody has been ingrained in them for so long. They've done it so well for so long that it's so second nature. Then to help someone at the beginning of that journey is hard, because you're doing it without even thought. And so it's really hard to coach someone in a completely different position than you, because you're doing it without second thought. Yeah. And they find it so hard to do. They need a lot of that willpower to even get started, to even want to do it.
Yeah, and you almost look at them as they're not able to do it, and not from a negative perspective, but you try to figure it out. I know one of my difficulties is I fancy myself not to be very smart. So if I understand something, I think everybody should understand something. And in some instances that's true, in other instances it's not. But I have to really check myself with that, because of just what you said. It's not that you're smart, it's that you've been doing it for so long that, you acquired a skill. Yeah. But, there's another saying there that, right, you've heard, that every professional was once an amateur. And how do we start? We start by really not even knowing what we don't know. And then we go through all those different stages of development. People they have unconscious incompetence. They don't even know what they don't know. Then they go through conscious incompetence, where they know that they don't know something. Then they have conscious competence, where they actually know it, but they have to be very careful. And then unconscious competence, where it's almost second nature, and then you could go on to mastery. So you're already sitting at that mastery piece, or the unconscious competence, right? Whereas somebody comes along and they don't know all of the things that you know, and sometimes it gets a little bit frustrating, because for you it's second nature, and for them it's like learning a whole new language. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It sure does. And you know what I think makes as hard as the coaching can be sometimes, because someone's way over here and you're over here, is the conviction in how that person's going to feel by the end. Yeah. I know how great I feel. I know how great our clients feel, and the confidence they have when they walk in a room because of the energy they have and the way they look. And I'm always thinking about that in the process, knowing that, hey, this person may be a pain in the ass to work with. They may have a lot more hurdles to overcome than most, but it's going to be worth it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But sometimes people don't want to get to that point.
So
right?
true.
Sometimes they sabotage. And, we've talked about this numerous times, right? The brain doesn't like change, even though change is good for you. So people will do things knowing that it's a bad outcome because it's comfortable, right? That's why people continue to smoke, right? It's comfortable. It's kind of the devil right? And those are the things. So a lot of times we see it and we look at it and we say, whoa, if you do this, you're going to feel as good as I feel. Or if you do this, you'll be able to create that. And they're like, nah, I'm not buying it. Sorry, Charlie, So I think that's the catch with... That's the catch with coaching, and that's the catch with self-development, is that if somebody doesn't want to change, you're not going to change them.
And you know what? To say it bluntly, that's what it takes to be great at anything.
Yeah.
There's a reason why people idolize the six-pack is because not a lot of people are ever going to have six-packs, real ones. There might be artificial implants in 10 years. A lot more of those going around. But, to have something that is not common is desirable.
Yeah.
Because it takes something that most people don't have or never want to have.
It becomes a little bit of a, people say, you shouldn't be jealous. I disagree. If you use jealousy properly and to drive you, I think it's okay. You shouldn't use jealousy to knock somebody else down. But if you're jealous because somebody has a six-pack, like you say, and you look and see how they got it, and that drives you, let it drive you.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's the case. I mean, if you look at somebody like yourself who's done a phenomenal job from an entrepreneurial perspective, from a coaching perspective, from the InstaShred and what you created as a physique, etc., if somebody follows, for the most part, we talked about that before, there's different people who have metabolic problems, all kinds of other things, but for the most part, they'll get close to where you're at. They may not be exactly where you're at, but they'll get close as long as they have the discipline and are able to follow that. It's the catch to be able to do it, right?
Well said. Yeah. This could be something that you could answer, but that made me think of something that I've started to watch a little more the past 2 years, because my whole life I've never watched professional sports, but I've realized the past 2 years, hey, there's something really unique about these guys. They're the best of the best, and they apply themselves so well and so uniquely. But a lot of people are aware of professional sports, and I think a lot of people are motivated and encouraged by professional sports, especially kids, right? And a lot of kids have the dreams and aspirations to do that one day. And like you said, even if they're inspired by the professional athletes and they only become an eighth of what those professionals ever are, well, then they did something well for themselves. But why do you think so many adults don't dream, don't get inspired by that kind of stuff?
That's actually interesting, because you're right. When we're kids, we want to be everything, right? You ask a 5-year-old, what do you want to be? I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a surgeon. I want to be an actor. I want to be everything. But I think at a certain point, unfortunately, it's society and to some extent our caregivers, parents, grandparents, etc., where they stop us from dreaming. It could be our teachers, etc., because once you get to be 14, 15, 16, everybody, the way society works is pick something that you want to start studying, right? You get to college, pick something. That experimental phase isn't really endorsed by a lot of people, right? So what was once fun and fantasy, right? Now they want you to get serious about it. You can't do that. And you can't do that. And really, the people that tell us we can't do it, eventually that becomes our inner voice. And we say, all right, we won't be able to do it. Somebody said, and I forgot who this was, be very careful, because with kids, your outside voice, whatever you're saying, becomes their inside voice, right? So that's the chatter that then happens in their head. So if you get a bunch of adults that are now telling you, you can't do that, you can't do this, that eventually happens. And we suppress that and we say, okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do something that somebody else wants us to actually do.
Wow. Yeah. Drawing that back at the correlation, it makes me think of how actions speak louder than words too. So many parents, a lot of their reasons for getting more fit is they want to be a good example for their family.
Right.
And telling your family to be healthy isn't enough.
No.
If you're not an example of that, well, they're going to follow that more than what you're telling them to do.
Yeah, no, it's true. It was something we were doing an Instagram post on something that was very similar to what you just said. Does your audio match your video? Right, and it's exactly. Are you actually doing what you're saying? And we all do that, right? We say, oh, I don't, as doctors, we used to do that. I mean, I had a lot of bad vices. Not that I should confess them all, but heck, I was a smoker many years ago as a doctor, right? Telling people don't smoke, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those do as I say, not as I do. But you really have to reflect on yourself and see, hey, are the things that I'm doing actually, are my thoughts, are my actions moving me towards the goals that I want? And if they're not, how do I go ahead and change them? And that's the same thing that's applicable to the physical fitness world as it is to self-development and attaining financial goals, job goals, etc. And everybody's going to stumble. But if you're able to have that self-awareness that we were talking about earlier before the cameras were rolling, that is the key. To be able to be self-aware, to have that mindfulness, to know where you're at, where you want to go, and then to be truly honest with yourself. Because we all lie to ourselves. I do it all the time myself, right? You have to catch yourself. And that's what's going to be able to drive you to where you need to be. But if you're closed-minded and you don't have that honesty and you're painting a picture that isn't realistic, eventually it's going to bite you know where.
Life-changing stuff.
Yeah.
I love this. We both got crazy good qualities here. If you pair emotional intelligence with physical fitness, man, we're changing the world.
Well, I mean, emotional intelligence and physical fitness should all go together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what we talk about in the My Focus model. The F is fitness, and it's right where you sit, and in all three of those areas, sleep, nutrition, and exercise, And I think if people understand how important that is, really when you look at it, if you don't have your own physicality, your own physical health, you have nothing. And then if you're physically healthy, and you don't have the proper mindset or the proper mind because you're struggling with depression or things of that nature, that's a big struggle too. And you're not 100%. And then spiritually, from a values perspective, what do you want your life to be like? What are your values? Or, a lot of people say, oh, family's my values. And they work 90 hours a week and are never home to see their kids, right? So is that really your value, or are you chasing something else? It's fine if that's what you're chasing, but don't lie to yourself. Be honest with yourself. If family is truly your values, change some of the things that you're doing in order to live by your values. Because there's a saying, if you live by your values, you'll always be successful, whether or not you attain your goals or not.
Well said.
So,
makes total sense.
So, sleep. We talked about sleep. How important for you is sleep and rest as it relates to the physical fitness realm?
Extremely important. I've religiously this is one area I've never compromised. I always try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, regardless. I know you're going to go through the proper cycles, REM, all the rest. If you can get 7 to 8 hours of sound sleep, you'll be good. And it affects so much. I mean, muscular recovery, cognitive function. I mean, it affects so much within the body that I think, once again, some people are operating at a 5 out of 10. They've got used to getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep night after night. They don't realize how much they're missing out on by just tacking on an extra hour or two a night.
Oh, yeah. No, and even from a hormonal perspective, so we were talking a lot about obesity and things of that nature. And when you have lack of sleep, ghrelin and leptin are two hormones that actually can control your appetite, and that
Greatly.
tends to get goofed up. Cortisol tends to get goofed up. So there's a host of reasons. Plus, if I only slept 2 hours and I'm coming to work out with you, I don't have the energy to be able to do that. And like you say, muscle recovery, things of that nature. So I think people really don't understand the importance of sleep on that continuum.
Yeah.
I think exercise and food, extremely important. But I think sleep is really that foundation, because you could eat well, you could exercise, but if you lack sleep, hypertension, diabetes, sudden cardiac death, all kinds of things related to sleep deprivation. So I think it's truly important to get that in there.
Yeah, and I think the past few years, tell me if you've noticed this too, but a lot of health and wellness experts, even self-development experts, have admitted that sleep is a lot more important than we once thought. Especially in the entrepreneurial world, it was kind of the cool thing to get minimal hours of sleep, wake up super early and grind it out. But a lot of them, one I greatly look up to, Tony Robbins, said he underslept for years.
Right.
It wasn't until he was 50-something until he realized, wow, this is way more important. The science and research shows way more important than we would ever thought.
And that's kind of funny because that is science and research, right? Because it happens in cycles. Don't eat eggs, eat margarine, eat this, right? Now eat eggs. Don't eat margarine, eat grass-fed butter, right? Don't sleep, right? So there's always that change, right? Which is a good thing because science is always evolving. But I think what you have to do is you have to embrace that. And that's why I think that the pure fundamentals, if you start with that as a base and then kind of decide for yourself what works and what doesn't, I think that's the best approach because everybody tends to get on the bandwagon of something. And, once they say eat eggs, then they'll eat, 12 dozen of eggs every 2 hours. No, relax, right? Do the things that make sense, proper sleep, proper nutrition, proper exercise, all right up your alley, right? Proper self-awareness, proper mindfulness, good relationships. You start building those things, your life becomes a lot more meaningful.
I agree. It's a big, beautiful balance, right? We can overdo anything.
So very entrepreneurial you are in the sense that you've done a great job for yourself. You're a young person. You've got InstaShred is doing great online.
Thanks, Mike.
Habits. What is the one habit that you think has made you successful and brought you to where you are today?
The word that comes to mind is discipline. With consistency, discipline with doing the shit you don't want to do every single day. The discipline to stay productive when every day I wake up, I have nothing that I necessarily need to do. I have no one to answer to. I don't have a clock to punch. I have to get shit done every single day, and I could easily not. And there's many days, maybe you can experience too, that I haven't gotten anything done because I wasn't disciplined. But consistently, you've got to be disciplined in the areas of life that you know are worthwhile.
No, well said. Well said. Yeah, without discipline, it's hard to accomplish things without a doubt.
Yeah.
Now, if you didn't do physical fitness, training, what do you think you would have done instead?
Oh, man. Well, I'd like to say simply I'd be lost, but I think I would have found something. I was going down the path of becoming an EMT.
Okay.
Your son mentioned off camera what was he going through? He was studying BLS, basic life support.
BLS.
Yeah, it brought me back to my EMT days when I was trying to become a fireman, paramedic. And that was a route I was considering because I thought that was one of the better sound jobs you could have not going to college. And I just wasn't passionate about it. Yeah. I think what really discouraged me, it was more of an industry that it was who you knew rather than what you knew. And I applied myself so well to becoming a fireman, but I got discouraged year after year when I was applying to these departments because I was getting beat out by the fireman's son or the uncle of so-and-so. Everyone was always in line, no matter what you did, even if you were way better at them. Yeah. You didn't have a chance. And I was tired of being on that waiting list.
Yeah. But look how it turned out. It's good you didn't get accepted, right?
True. Yeah. I'm right where I need to be. Love what I do.
Perfect. Hey, Tyler, it's been a pleasure. It's always great seeing you.
Yeah.
I appreciate talking to you, as always.
And I appreciate you having me on because you've added great value to my life and you're great at what you do.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care.